welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com. What is up, beautiful people of Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Noah Schreck. I'm joined every Friday by my man, Derek the Kid Bell. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalk or anywhere you get your podcasts. Derek, the Pittsburgh Steelers have a tall task on their hands, one that they probably had for a year now, ignored for, I believe, the right reasons up until one point. Replacing Stephon Tuitt. Not easy, but it's got to be done. I think we both agree on that one. It's a beautiful day here in good old Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm outside the burg for the weekend. I'm sure everything's going well there in good old Kentucky. How you feeling, my friend? Oh, you're muted.
Whoa, my bad. No, I mean, same old. We had some bad storms the last couple of days, so the weather was okay yesterday, like evening, so that was nice. But yeah, busy week. Ready to end the week on a high note with the pod. Talk some ball.
Yeah, I feel that one. I feel like we might be the only podcast that starts every episode talking about the weather. Yeah, just like a nice update, like everybody's concerned about the weather. It's the best way to start anything.
I'm not the only. There's a lot of Steelers fans in Louisville, but I've only got a couple of followers that are from Louisville, so I don't get to talk Louisville stuff much with the people. So
hey, I didn't know Louisville. If we're being honest, I didn't even realize where Kentucky was when I first met you. I kind of forgot it was a state. Now I've realized it's literally next to everything in the whole world. You could get anywhere in like 3.5 hours. That's pretty much the glimpse of Louisville. And for some reason, it's always raining there. It's either raining or like 1 billion degrees of just pure sweat. So it sounds like a great time. Sounds like a great place to live.
It's that Ohio Valley, man. That humidity's crazy. So
yeah, no, I'm good on all that. All good on all that. Although the farmer stand's nice from OTAs, obviously. We're hit the sunglass stand's nice, actually. That never goes away though. That's a living, breathing thing when it comes to Four Eyes. All right. Anyways, let's talk about some football. Pittsburgh Steelers OTAs happened this week. A lot of exciting stuff, a lot of super boring stuff. The biggest news, though, easy, is Stephon Tuitt officially announcing his retirement on Thursday, 2 days ago, or Wednesday, I guess it would be 2 days ago on June 1st, which actually saved the Steelers a boatload of money. I think that was a good move on his part. I also believe that to a degree, the Steelers knew about this maybe a week ago and said, hey, you're not doing anything until June 1st because you're not going to take all this money or our cap hit's not going to be even bigger. You got to play the game with us. Now they're tasked with replacing him. Chances are Chris Wormley's going to play a big role. They brought in DeMarvin Leal. Isaiah Loudermilk's a growing piece, and I think that's where we should start there. Do they have anybody on the roster? Nope, you're already shaking your head. No, to replace this piece here.
Man, that's a tough one. I mean, I just think that you have to be realistic about expectations when it comes to like the players that are filling in for Tuitt. Like I know Tuitt's missed a lot of time, and obviously they didn't get a good return on investment with his contract that he signed back in 2017, just because of how much time he's missed for various reasons, injuries, and the situation last year. But the defensive line was a problem last year, man. Like you can't deny it. It wasn't just the D line, like the linebackers didn't play well, but like when your franchise gives up the most rushing yards it ever has in a era where like teams are really trying to throw the ball, like that's an alarming statistic, man. So they got some guy, like they got Tyson Alualu coming back, but he's 35 years old coming off a major leg injury. So, I mean, you have to temper expectations. Like, who knows, like, what he's going to look like when the pads come on in preseason. The other part of that is, like, they did get contributions last year from the young guys. So, like, you saw more of Loudermilk. They brought in Monty Adams. So, they got some experience under their belt. Leal's kind of the wild card, right? Because he's put on a bunch of weight to fit that 3-4 defensive end mold that the Steelers want him at. And like honestly, like he played kind of all over the place at Texas A&M. So we don't really know what he's going to look like at the current weight that he's at either until the pads come on. So there's a lot of question marks, man, for sure.
Oh, a ton. And I don't think I think Leal is the best long-term option for the
Oh,
Steelers.
absolutely. Yeah.
But he's a third-round pick. You're not going to say, hey, come in here and start, especially start to replace Stephon Tuitt. That's not the answer. Even if they did bulk up, I do believe that there's potential there in the future. But I also believe that the Steelers looked at that draft pick and said, we have a year, hopefully, with Stephon Tuitt before Leal's got to take on that starting role. Now they're screwed. You did not mention Wormley there. Is Wormley a forgotten piece? I mean, we both know who Wormley is, but I think as of now, that's the expectation is for him to start.
Yeah. I think Wormley's going to be the starter. My view on Wormley is that I think he's a contributor and somebody that you are good with giving snaps to, but he's not a starter. And we saw that last season. Like their defensive line of insert nose tackle, whether it be Adams or they used, Mondu there. I mean, their defensive line last year got shredded against the run. And I know that Wormley did have like kind of a breakout season on paper in terms of like sacks because he had 7 sacks. But you really like look at his production and that's good, but like his pressure percentage was only like 6.3. So that means like you're looking at like a outlier type season. Anytime a guy has a bunch of sacks, but they're not really around the quarterback that much, like pressuring the quarterback, you look at that like, I don't want to say like flukish, like he didn't deserve it because he did, but you look at that kind of a little bit sideways, like, is that going to be able to be replicated? And that's really my concern there. And again, the run defense, I mean, they struggle without Tuitt. So really, it's just a matter of like, are they going to be comfortable going into the season with Wormley as the starter and then the young guys kind of behind them? So
let me ask you about Isaiah Loudermilk, because I don't think Isaiah's future is at defensive end. I think he's the next Cam Hayward or like meant to play that role. Is he too big to play the Stephon Tuitt role? He bulked up. He told me he's at 304 or something right now, 310. He was like 275 last year when he came into the NFL.
Yeah, he was 275 coming in. I mean, Loudermilk's huge. I mean, in terms of like the same build, if he's up to 310, 315, that's going to put him like literally the same build as Tuitt. I mean, at least close because I think Tuitt's like 6'6", 6'7". I think Loudermilk's like 6'6" and some change. So yeah, I mean, like I think that he could contribute there. I was really surprised. I know Loudermilk put on weight before the season last year. I don't know how much he's added since last year ended exactly, but like you could tell he put on weight because of how well he played the run, especially towards the end of the season. Like he was one of their better like run defenders on defense. So
yeah.
My question with Loudermilk is he doesn't really have, and like he's a rookie and he's a day 3 pick. So like, again, expectations, but he doesn't really have a pass rush arsenal. It's like he doesn't have he doesn't have like a go-to move. He doesn't have like those counters that you really look for. So in my opinion, that kind of limits his upside for this year. Now, what he can be in the future remains to be seen. But like we talked about Wormley's like pressure percentage at like 6. I think Loudermilk was at 4.5 per 6. So, I mean, like that's like those are run stopping defensive lineman numbers, which again, like that's fine because they struggled against the run. So maybe they utilize him a little bit more. But, the other thing with like Tuitt, what he allowed them to do, like the Steelers have done a great and excellent job. And I feel like the national media kind of uses that against TJ Watt a little bit. But like when you have so many good pass rushers and you have Stephon Tuitt and you have, Bud Dupree, Cam Hayward, that frees up opportunities for TJ Watt. So like the more guys that you have up front, you have to pick and choose on who you're going to double. Like you can't double everybody. So when you take Tuitt out of that equation, obviously it didn't bother Watt like as much last year, but like how is he going to be able to maintain that same level of production, which was historic? And is Cam Hayward going to be able to fend off Father Time for another year? Like those are questions that like you have to ask yourself. But yeah, a lot of question marks for sure.
No, definitely a lot of questions. And I agree with that one. I think that's what a lot of people who are optimistic, and, I'm all about the optimism, but a lot of people make the comments of, oh, the defensive line wasn't great, but they worked out last year. There's all these names still. And I think there is, they have options, but just like you said, how long can they push the envelope before it's going to come back to bite them in the butt? And I think that the defense as a whole right now is built to the point where it could succeed. They put a lot of pieces together that they needed to put together. And if the defensive line is the weak spot, you just ruined all of that effort because you didn't address Stephon Tuitt's replacement. Let's talk about the 3 guys that they brought in, because, and this is exactly this is why I thought, oh, they knew it was coming. And I heard, from people the day that it happened, they knew about this for days. They brought in Trent Harris, Afidi, do you know this last name? Ogbo? I can never remember, out of Minnesota. Yeah. And Wyatt Ray for workouts, I want to say Tuesday. Didn't end up signing any, but brought them in. I don't know too much about them. I don't know if you know too much about them. Do you feel any of those are an option for the Steelers here? Young guys. They all seem to be quite young. Yeah.
I remember Ray coming out of Boston College, but I remember him more as playing kind of off the edge. So I don't know that he would be a direct replacement for.
Oh yeah, he's 250 pounds.
Yeah. So just one more thing to hit on, kind of what you were saying. We talked about this last offseason, and that was something that really bothered me. We knew. So 2 seasons ago, the offensive line had a ton of trouble, and then the Steelers went into last year, and they drafted Kendrick Green the 3rd round. They drafted Dan Moore in the 4th round, but didn't really have a splash free agent signing. They picked up Trey Turner extremely late after the David DeCastro retirement as kind of a bargain bin shopping type of deal. But we knew that they didn't do enough to be a good offensive line. You were just kind of hoping maybe they could be good enough. Well, they weren't. Yeah. So I always think the best GMs and the best organizations don't let fatal flaws carry over from season to season. You're always going to have weaknesses around your team, but you don't want those weaknesses in back-to-back years, because that just means that you failed to address and develop.
Yep.
So that's my concern this year is the run defense was historically bad last year. I don't know if they've done enough up until this point with their current roster as it stands. Now that we know Stephon Tuitt's not coming back, I don't know if they've done enough to improve that. And you really, really don't want to have that same weakness year after year.
I agree with that.
That's my point on that.
Just on the other side of that coin, though. And I agree, they should have addressed Stephon Tuitt. Whether they felt he was coming back or not, there should have been an option there. Definitely an option. I also feel as if they have a lot of faith in Isaiah Loudermilk. Maybe too much faith for a second-year guy, but I feel they have a lot of faith in Isaiah Loudermilk. I also feel as if they looked at inside linebacker and the lack of Tyson as where those holes came from more than Wormley, which, again, I think is a bad way to judge that, because I think they're putting too much on to Wormley. The fact that even Art Rooney called Wormley a starter, in my eyes, means that you guys were way too comfortable with a guy who didn't play superstar potential, who just kind of replaced Tuitt but didn't really do anything crazy, and just kind of made excuses oh, well, Robert Spillane had to start at inside linebacker because Joe Schobert sucked, so we'll just go get Miles Jack. Okay, yeah, I get that, but Tyson's 35 years old, like you said. Monty Adams is not a starter. So I think they addressed it. I just don't feel they addressed it. I think they put too much faith into guys that they shouldn't have.
Yeah. So that's a coaches always feel like they can develop, they're overconfident in their ability to develop. That's just something that I've learned over the years. So, and I don't blame them for anything that they've necessarily done to this point, because, Tuitt apparently was truly 50-50 per Cam Hayward. I'm sure that he was telling the stand the same thing to the Steelers org, but at the same time, Tuitt's gone now. So like that's in the past. Like you have plenty of cap space. They're like sitting over 20 million per over the cap. So I mean, that you got room to work with, and there's still some guys out there, some guys that we'll talk about in terms of like bringing them in.
Yeah, and I think that's where we go next. Somebody asked in the chat here.
Sorry, I had to pull this up, man. I don't know what y'all was watching last year. The defense was bad. It's just the offense was bad too, so we didn't focus on it, or y'all didn't. Defense was bad last year. I don't know why. I don't know what we're watching.
The whole team as a whole, but decent free agents. I think the market's low. I think the biggest thing here when it comes to the free agency is Akeem Nicks was sitting right there, and they clearly knew that Stephon Tuitt. Like, there's no way Tuitt called them at like noon and was like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna retire," and then 2 hours later they put that news out. That's not happening. You talk to Tyson, you talk to Cam, and both of them said when he told me the news a couple days ago. So that means they knew. Akeem Nicks signed the day before Tuitt retires. In my opinion, that's the biggest mess up they've made. Maybe all offseason so far. I think the offseason's been pretty all right. To not go and get the best player on the market, there was a flaw. Now they're left with one option if he's healthy, and the rest of them might be scraps.
Yeah. I mean, there's this late in free agency, like your options are going to be a little bit limited. The interesting viewpoint will be whether they elect to like sign somebody right now and get them into camp, get them familiar with the defense, or do they want to wait with that cap space? Because that, come training camp time, there's going to be some surprise cuts. Every year, there's a team that'll end up cutting guys based on, a rookie they brought in or anything like that. So there could be a surprise cut along the defensive lines that they could take advantage of later on. But again, that's risky because if you do that, some of these guys that are available right now may not be available. And like I talked about the other day, like Larry Ogunjobi, who played with the Bengals last year. He's played in Cleveland, a guy that the Steelers are really familiar with. They've faced him 10 times. But Ogunjobi had like the best year of his career last year. Really disruptive player. 14 tackles for loss. He led the Bengals in war against the run, which I thought was interesting. Not anything crazy as far as like a pass rusher, but his pressure percentage last year, according to SIS, was 9.6. Cameron Hayward's was 10.4. Again, he's not receiving the same sort of attention that Cam Hayward is, obviously. True. But I mean, he's not a scrub. So like he's a guy that's starter capable. And like, still, I think he's 28 years old. I'd have to look at that, but I want to say he's like 28 years old. So
yeah, he just turned 29, I believe.
Yeah. So 28, 29 years old. So he's like, right. I mean, a short 1 or 2 year deal. The key is though, he signed a 3-year, $40 million deal with Chicago earlier this offseason that got vetoed because he failed his physical. He got hurt late in the season. I think broke his foot, if I remember correctly, and failed a physical. So who knows how healthy he is? Who knows if the Steelers would have like interest? But like he's definitely a name out there that like he can play some ball and help you in year one for sure.
Do you know what his contract with Chicago was supposed to be? Because
3 for 40.
3 for 40. See, like that's not terrible, especially if he failed a physical. The value is going to go down. You could get him on a 2-year deal, maybe even a 1-year prove it deal, which is what the Pittsburgh Steelers should be looking for.
And you also look at it. Yeah, I mean the health. He's got to be healthy. That's the thing. Because if he's not healthy and his foot's not recovering the way that it needs to, like he doesn't help you at all. Because he's just going to be the same thing. Like you're going to have a guy on the IR. But I mean, you look at Ogunjobi, and you look around the league in terms of like cap space. Steelers have 20 million, which I think is per over the cap. It's like 6th or 7th most in the NFL. There's not a whole lot of teams with like more than 12 million cap space. Like most teams like to leave themselves a little bit of wiggle room, like the Steelers do. So there's only a specific amount of fits out there for him. So like he's gonna have limited options at this point. Like you don't really see a lot of people just, signing huge deals like that in the middle of the summer. That's usually a thing that happens as soon as free agency ends. And then at this point in the summer, guys are kind of taking what you can get. Even look at a guy like Terrell Edmonds. He was talking about, he was engaged with several teams, and then the market just dropped. And that's why he came back to Pittsburgh, like later in free agency, like not in the first couple of weeks. But as the offseason goes on, typically you don't see a lot of big deals. Like you might see one or two right before the season if like a surprise veteran, J.J. Watt, Joe Hayden type, somebody that's been a Pro Bowler in the past gets released surprisingly. But
dude, could you imagine J.J. Watt getting cut? Could you imagine J.J. Watt getting cut?
We'd have to do a daily podcast for the Yenders.
Would lose our mind. I couldn't even imagine. Although TJ's becoming a little scary, just a little, locker room tidbit for everybody. TJ got a little mad at Joe Rutter out of the Trib the other day, just for asking like the same questions that he always gets asked. And I was talking to Miles Jack, and I heard it, so I like kind of turned my head, and Joe was red as all hell, which I would probably poop myself a little bit. And TJ was actually pissed, and I was like, oh shit, okay, sorry, not looking. It was great. TJ's really coming into his own here in his 6th year, but this is where I wanted to touch on Fletcher Cox. A lot of smoke the last 2 years. I believe Phantom TV out here in the comments said last year was a 3rd round pick that people were saying he was worth. He's got to be what? He's got to be 33 years old as well, something like that. An option? Are you giving up a 3rd round pick for a 33-year-old? First of all,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, I know that there was some smoke last year about that. Cox redid his deal in the offseason, though. Like he has a relatively low cap hit. Excuse me. The next 2 seasons, and then they added Philly. They do that thing where they add void years to everybody's contract. So, he's still a productive player. I didn't watch Philly very much last year, so I couldn't really tell you as far as like how he performed last year. I'd have to look at some numbers at least to give you an idea. I mean, Cox has always been. I will still say that I used to tell people all the time, I've never seen. DeCastro was a good player for a number of years for the Steelers. I've never seen DeCastro struggle like he did against Fletcher Cox. I mean, Fletcher Cox, he murdered that man in their matchup. True. So that was an embarrassment. It looks like Cox, his pressure percentage last year was like 8.6. That's still pretty solid.
That's not bad, especially for a guy. I think the big thing is the Steelers don't need a star, They just need somebody to come in here and be consistent, because they have Wormley, they're going to want Leal to play, Loudermilk to play, and they'll replace all 3 of those guys. They'll replace Alualu, Cam, and whoever starts at defensive end. But I think they just need somebody, like a reliable guy, because Wormley, like you said early, cannot play 70% of the snaps. That cannot happen. Yeah,
and like that's the thing is, I think a lot of this, like we talked about Leal. I mean, we've talked about Leal we were talking about him before the draft. We've talked about him a lot. It really just depends on like how he carries that additional weight, and like how do the Steelers view him? Like that's the other thing. Like when we're talking about potential like personnel moves and who they should bring in, who they haven't. Like we don't know. Like we're not in the room to know how the coaches evaluate or how they, value these players. So like I don't know how they valued Leal. Like my thought process, honestly, I think if Pickens was gone at 52, I think they would have taken Leal there. That's just an educated guess, but like I think they were pretty high on him.
But they were definitely high. Didn't they go? They went to his pro day. They spoke with him at the combine.
Yeah, but like right. I wonder if they view like, because you can be high on a player, but also acknowledge that the player is not ready to really be a significant contributor in year 1, So that's the question. Do they really believe, if they believe that Leal can play snaps, if he can give you 15, 20 snaps a game in year 1 by the end of the year, if they believe that, then maybe they don't go after somebody. You know what I'm saying? So,
but is that okay? It's kind of hard to tell. If Leal's playing 15 to 20 snaps by the end of the season, is that comfortable enough? Like, is that all you want Wormley off the field for?
Yeah, I mean, like that would be like something to give you a little bit of a pass rushing attack. Because Leal, in my like, he already has Leal probably has, other than Hayward and Watt and Highsmith, he probably has the most pass rushing moves of anybody they've got on the defensive line. Adams
Oh
has a
yeah.
good amount too, but like, I mean, I saw Leal use a fake spin, club chop, like rip. I mean, he has a lot of moves in his bag, so he's ready to rush the passer. I just don't know how he's going to hold up against the run because that was something he struggled with in college. But you also have to look at two different things. One, they were aligning Leal at edge. They were
Yeah.
aligning him at nose tackle, at defensive end, and he was playing at 280. So that's a different weight than he's going to be. I mean, he's going to be 295, probably, 295, whatever, during the season, and he's going to be playing a different position. So you just don't know how he's going to hold up against those double teams. That's what you'll have to figure out in preseason. That's why I said maybe the approach of waiting until preseason to see if like there's a cut, because then you'll get 3 games of Leal against NFL competition with that additional weight, and you'll see if he can hold up. So that's just
I
my
get that.
thought process.
I get that. That's a long time. It's like, I get it. I think at this point, with one option realistically in free agency, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I don't feel good about it though. But at the same time, I'm really optimistic about Loudermilk. Like, maybe too optimistic about Loudermilk. And I think that's an underlying factor here that nobody's going to talk about. What about Ndamukong Suh? Been tossed out in the chat a couple of times here. I don't know about a defensive end. Has he ever played anything besides?
Yeah, I
right at the
mean,
nose?
so the thing is too, the Steelers are in nickel so much. So like all of these guys are interior defensive linemen. Like they're gonna play it like the defensive tackle, like lined up over guards. That's where you're gonna play. Like your base stuff like doesn't matter as much. I mean, it matters, but it's not everything like it used to be. But I wanted to get to this comment too from Donald. Donald, yeah, I've been talking about Adams all off season. I feel like he is a little bit forgotten about in terms of additions or guys that they were able to bring back. Adams has a ridiculous first step, man. He's got one of the quickest first steps that I think I've seen like on the Steelers in a little bit. His ability to get off the snap at his weight is really impressive, and he's got some pass rushing moves to boot. So I'm excited about him. I don't know if he's good enough against the run to play starter snaps, but I do think as a reserve, especially off the bench, like anytime you can add pass rushing, like me and Noah talk about this all the time, but you can never have enough pass rushers. And like I think he can definitely do that. Like we talk about like pressure percentages. I want to say Adams was up there. I want to look real quick. Adams was up there like 10%, like with Cam Hayward last year. Obviously, that's really limited snaps, not receiving the same type of, attention that Hayward gets. But
do you think
yeah.
Tyson can move over to defensive end again? Are you going to trust that? 35 years old?
I don't know that. I don't think Tyson could do that, to be honest.
That's what I'm saying. That's a whole other beast than what Tyson's like. You want Tyson to play 30 snaps a game, maybe. No, quality 30 snaps, but that's all you're asking for him. Anything more than that, I feel like you're putting way too much on his shoulders. I think that's where people are getting with the Monty stuff is they want Monty to be that guy in the middle so Tyson can move.
And I'm just not sure. I'm not sure that he's like the Steelers have a lot of guys that I think are potential contributors. I just don't know if they have like if you really want to be like that dominant defense, because like we've talked about too, like the Steelers have to be dominant on defense for them to even have hopes of making the playoffs. Like they have to be, because I mean, you're going to be starting either Trubisky or a rookie quarterback. If you really want to make the playoffs, especially with this division, I don't think the schedule outside of the division is too crazy, but this division, you got to have a dominant defense. Like they've invested, they spent the most money on that side of the ball. So you have to decide like if you're comfortable with Wormley or somebody else like starting and playing that many snaps. I'm just not ready to say that.
See, I agree. I definitely agree. The JJ Watt trend is going nuts at this point.
Popping off in the chat.
I think we might have started something. I think the JJ Watt might have started something. Is JJ Watt washed up? And let's answer that question. I haven't watched a JJ Watt snap in a long time.
I watched very little Arizona last year, so I wouldn't be able to tell you that. I know that when there was people talking about it last year, I went back and watched Watt because he had missed games the year before, and I think that's why, like, there was a mutual want to move on. But at the same time, like when I watched him last summer, I didn't think he was washed up. Now I
Yeah, that's
thought
what I'm
that the
saying. I don't
money,
know. I don't know what washed up is with JJ Watt.
I thought the money that Arizona gave him was a little high, but I get it. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I'm looking at this just from a numbers perspective, but 13% pressure percentage. That's pretty dang good. So I don't know. I guess he's still cooking. Maybe
I don't know what washed up is, but I don't think it's that. I don't think
maybe
it.
I'll go and check out some Watt film this week and maybe tweet out some clips. I don't know. We'll see.
Watt would be a good one. Watt would be a good one. Do you?
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered all the bases here. The big question is, what is the move? If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think you've already kind of said this, but haven't said it straightforward. You're just waiting it out. You're saying, hey, we're gonna wait till the preseason, and then if Leal's not the answer, if Wormley's not the answer, we're gonna rock with it. Do you think Wormley could turn into the answer?
No, not really.
No?
I mean, like in terms of what? Like in terms of being like a
surprise starter.
Yeah, so like in terms of being the first person off the bench, like I definitely think Wormley's capable of that. Like depending on who your starters are for sure. I just don't know if that's really I just don't know that I view him as a starter on a dominant defense. Like that's the thing. If you really want to be like a top 5 defense, I don't know that you can run it back. I don't know if that defensive line with 35-year-old Tyson and Wormley is going to be good enough against the run. We'll have to see. I mean, I have my doubts on that. Like I said, it wasn't all the defensive line's fault last year in terms of like them being so poor against the run. Like Devin Bush really struggled. Joe Schobert struggled. We know about Robert Spillane. I mean, those guys were getting benched for Marcus Allen, Robert Spillane later in the season. So like adding Miles Jack, we'll see how that he needs a bounce back year too, because like he really struggled last year as well. So
Brian Flores.
Brian
Flores, I think, changes the whole landscape of things. Like
potentially, yeah.
Yeah, his impact, I believe, across the board will be at least enough to improve things. Doesn't make things better. I don't know. But things will improve. The improvement needed to be better is significant. So I think that's noteworthy. But I think, if Devin Bush comes back, and Devin Bush, I mean, if the linebackers are going to be okay, I think it starts with Devin Bush. And Devin Bush, for the first time, felt like a guy. I mean, I don't know if you heard his interview the other day, but that sounded like a dude who who's like ready to be the dude again. Like he was real open about like, I was very scared to get hurt again and go back to being alone in my house. And I was like, yeah, I get that, like. And if he's like not about that anymore, then I think Devin Bush could be fine. Now, athletically, we have to see what happened, but
yeah,
I think that's the first step in that process.
Right. And that's like where you really got to look at it. Like I don't know, like there's 2 separate things there because you have to figure out what percentage of that is mental and what of it's physical. Devin didn't look like a good athlete last season.
Yeah.
Some of that, like you have to figure out, like some of that I felt like he was slow to trigger and like just poor eyes and just not being technically sound. And then some of that I felt like there could be a chance that maybe that ACL just zapped some of his athleticism. We're going to really have to figure that out again in the preseason. Like we'll be able to figure that out now that so much time has passed. Because if it doesn't come back early in the season, it's not coming back. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like a lot of people say like, everybody responds differently from ACL injuries. So you gotta note that too. Like he could just be one of those guys where it just takes a year and then maybe he comes back and play. But we'll have to see. I'm not getting my hopes up for Devin until I see Devin moving at the speed that he was a couple of years ago. And even then, like Devin still had some stuff to improve on, but like you knew that he was capable athletically of matching up on the field. Now I don't know because it wasn't like that last year. So
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I will say, just touching on the inside linebackers real quick when it comes to athleticism. We might have talked about this already, but Mark Robinson is like ridiculously fast. Like not like kind of fast. Like this dude is faster than the cornerbacks fast, but he's as big as Miles Jack, maybe bigger. It's actually crazy. They did like reversed, like, last day OTAs, they're going to mess around a little bit. So they were doing like pitch the ball to the running back, inside linebackers got to go track him down on the sideline. And they like reversed it, tossed it to Mark Robinson. Dude, he juked the ever living hell out of Jalen Warren, who I understand as an undrafted running back. I get it. But put him on the ground. It was ridiculous. Dude he might never be good, but he is crazy athletic, like crazy athletic. Something that the Steelers might need. Buddy Johnson looks okay, but I never knew what to expect from Buddy Johnson. But I think, just in full circle, it is on Devin.
They got a lot, and they got a lot of inside linebackers to like sort through how the rotation's going to be. They drafted a couple guys day 3, Johnson, Robinson. We'll have to just see. The big thing too is like, with Devin, and the reason why I stress like his athleticism and like his instincts like being better this year is because like Devin's not a guy that's going to take on blocks and like stacking shit to make tackles. Like Devin's a guy who's going to have to win with his athleticism and his quickness. So like if he doesn't have that, we already know he's really like been touted like coming out of school as like a sideline guy, not really a coverage guy. So you're really struggling to find a role for him if he can't do that. My thing is I want to know if they blitz Devin more, because I think that could be a way to get him to play faster.
Yeah.
And like Flores, like when I was doing work on some Flores like schematic stuff when they brought him in, man, Flores blitz packages best in the game. Like that's why I'm so excited to have him. Like everybody I think is getting excited over the OTA clips, man, but like I'm telling you, I think Flores is going to have like an influence in terms of like having, some design stuff in the playbook. Yep. And I can't wait to see that, because I think like some of the stuff he does is just awesome, man. Gets his guys freed up. So it's going to be fun.
I agree. I think Flores is, I don't know, dude, just from what I've seen, like, and like you said, the schematics more than I do, but just from what I've seen, like Flores is coaching more than TA. Like, and sometimes like I kind of feel bad for TA because Flores will like come over and like kind of like move him out of the way and start instructing things. And I'm like, that stinks, but it shouldn't. This is what should be happening. This is don't not do that. That's how the team's going to get better. So I don't know. It's a lot to watch. We're still in helmets and shorts, but inside linebackers could change the whole thing. They could also change the whole conversation that we just had, because if training camp comes around and you put pads on and people are hitting and Devin Bush and Miles Jack look ridiculous together, we don't really have to worry about replacing Stephon Tuitt. Like at that point, we could just talk about, can the defensive line have the depth around that to fill the needs, that they needed last year if everybody stays healthy, which is huge when you're talking about a 33 and a 35-year-old. Like absolutely huge. Scan through the comments real quick. I think we are good. I will touch on this. Mateo Durant looks nobody stood out at OTAs at all. Like none of the rookies, but Mateo Durant looks he looks like a natural running back. Whereas in like Jalen Warren reminds me of Doug Martin, just like a little muscle hamster just running around. So if I had to predict anybody to make a jump, him, Chris Steele. Mike Tomlin knows who Chris Steele is. I think that's something to note, but it was boring OTAs. It was super boring OTAs compared to last year when Rashad Coward was starting at left guard. Zach Banner, nobody was showing up. It was a great. TJ Watt was like working on side. It was phenomenal. There were so many storylines. Deontay Johnson took all that away by showing up twice just to say like, hey guys, we could stop talking about this. And nobody cares about Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green competing for left guard at all. And the quarterback battle sucks. So it's been a great time. Yeah. Sunburn's totally worth it. All right. We're going to head out of here. Thank you, everybody, for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. And as always, go use our promo code for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. We'll be back on Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend. Peace.